Hello, my name is Alison Mail. I'm a psychotherapist trainer. I work for the Center for Victims of Torture. Currently, I'm in Cambodia working for TPO, where I'm training the counselors to work with families. In doing this training, I use a method, here they are, called an added language. The method was developed by Marleen Dikman, a Dutch therapist, who actually worked in countries abroad, and because she worked with translators, she missed some language, so she started experimenting with using dolls to add meaning to the language, and that's how the method was born. So the method is called an added language. So the purpose of me today is to show you how the method works. There's a specific grammar to the method. So let's have a look. To be able to use the method, you need the dolls and you need some symbols. So the symbols need to be culturally appropriate. So please contact your local teams to know what symbols are necessary. First, maybe let's start with the dolls. So the dolls are available in different kinds of generations. So you can have grandparents, you can have parents, you can have children, all right? And you can also find dolls that have different colors, like more African or Asian types, okay? So the dolls, you can move them, you can make them sit down. I use them to sit down, for example, when a client is feeling depressed and has difficulties in going into action. You can bend them forward, you can put their arms up. And another specific tool is that if the person has deceased, is dead, you lay them down. Okay, all right. So a very first concept, and sorry, I forgot to say that the whole concept is based on the theory of contextual therapy of an Hungarian psychologist called Notch, because he believed that when you are in a family, let's say that this is the current family, what do I have? I have a mother and a husband, and let's say that there's 2 children, okay, all right. So if this is the current family, we step into the family and we always bring in values that we got from our own background, right? So if this would be the grandparents, so what this person learned as a child in this family, she will bring it into this family as values. For example, if in this family she learns that education is very, very important, for sure, when raising these children, there is a big chance that she will try to pass on that value as well, that education is very important. Okay, but of course then this man also comes from, do I have enough grandparents? Yeah. This man also comes from a specific background, where he also learnt specific values, okay? So maybe he learned in this family that having fun is very important, okay? So he'll bring that one into this family, okay? So those values could possibly conflict in the education of the children, okay? So just to show you that Notch said that who we are depends on where we come from, all right? This little one, which I call the inner child, always walks along with us. In our daily life, this little one is there when we make decisions, when we interact with other people. Okay, so the first important concept, so we have the adult doll and we have the inner child. The inner child represents where you come from and how you feel. All right? Okay. So today I have lots of things on the table, which is mainly for teaching purposes. But when you're working with clients, don't put too much clutter. Okay? There should not be too much on the table because it will get confusing, especially because the main purpose of this method is to visualize what is being said. So sometimes you can have extremely powerful images with very simple things. For example, if somebody would tell me, I'm feeling so depressed, I could say, is it like this? Yes, it's like this. I feel so cut off from my feelings. I take this for feelings. So I'm so cut off. I feel so cut off from how I feel. And I would say, does it feel like this? So that could already be enough to show a client how he feels. Okay, because the purpose in the session would be to take away this, to move this closer, and to get the client up on his feet again. Okay, so I've told you a bit about the dolls, the adult doll, the inner child. Now let's look at some symbols, how you use symbols. Okay, so there's some specific concepts that you have to respect when you're working with the dolls. And it probably looks very playful, but there's a very important principle in mental health, which is do no harm. Okay, so don't underestimate the impact of visualizing your pain. It can be very, very powerful. I remember once working with a client. He was a teenager. He was a political refugee, and both his parents had been killed in the war. And so he was telling me the story, and I said, both parents are dead. I put them down, and I remember seeing the pain in his eyes of seeing his parents again flat on the floor. I'd been too quick. Okay, so just be careful and be containing when you're using this method. For example, a very important principle is when you're working with clients is to work with their resources. For example, if I would have a grandfather who tells me that he suffered a lot during the Khmer Rouge times, okay, lots of painful memories. I have to make sure this one stands up. There we go. All right. That maybe he lost lots of family members and children. Okay. So in a session, I don't only want to focus on the pain that the person experienced, but I also want to focus on what helped him overcome this. Okay. So after he has visualized the pain, I would ask, like, how did you manage to get through this experience? What helped you? And maybe he will say, I don't know, religion was a very important resource for me, or I still have a younger daughter that helped me through it. So if I put out the symbol of pain, I always want to put out a resource. Okay? So often you want to end the session by showing the person what they learned from this experience. Although I show it was very painful, I want to end with what helped them to cope. Okay? So that's one important rule of the grammar. If you put out pain, you put out resource. Okay, let's look at some other grammar principles. Okay, the stick, which can indicate barriers. For example, if a couple would be divorced, okay, so I would indicate that their marriage is over, okay, but sometimes I would like to indicate that maybe they are no longer partners, but they are still parents. So I would visualize it like this. Okay. I would say, how can you still be a parent for your children, although you do not love each other anymore as a couple? Because often what happens is, because this doesn't work anymore, people tend to also start fighting here, and then children suffer, right? And sometimes I like to use this image to show people that they have a responsibility still as parents. Okay, so this I use for divorce. I could use it maybe for, I use it this week for a lady who was cut off from her children. She had no contact. Okay, and it was very, very painful for her. So we put this. But then I discovered that there was a niece as a resource that was very supportive to her. Okay, so this would then represent cut off from family members. Could also be like a cut off for people abroad. Or sometimes I also use it to represent the past, how it was in the past, how it is now, and how the person would like it to be in the future. So another symbol that you can use when working with the dolls are the squares, all right? So I use the squares in different kinds of situations. I sometimes use them to explain to clients a grieving process. For example, if the client has just lost a family member, okay, so put the doll down, and then I would explain how grief is. At first you are in shock, then you're in denial, then you have all the emotions, and then how you finally have to try to integrate this event into your life. Okay, so I would like explain all the steps, and then I would ask the client, where do you think you are in this grieving process? And then with a stick I would indicate, yes, well, I still can't believe it that it happened to me. Okay, if you are there, what would you need to move on to the next phase? Okay, so you're really, first you visualize the problem, but the objective is to activate the client to go on to the next phase. Okay, so what do you need to move on? Yeah, I think I would need to maybe do a ritual with the monks, because we were not able to do the ritual how it should have been. Okay, all right. So you can also use the squares, for example, to set out a plan. If somebody says, look, this is what I wish, this is what I would like to achieve. Maybe for students, the diploma at the end of the year. Okay, all right, so these are what steps you need to take. Okay, and if this is you here now, what are all the steps that you need to take to achieve this? You could even put out resources and say who along the way could be helpful when you take these steps. Okay, and so what's your next step and how will you do it? All right, so you're really mobilizing the clients to see the next steps. Okay, sometimes I also use it to visualize like complaints. If a person comes in and says, look, I worry about money, I physically don't feel well, I don't have much support, I don't sleep very well. So sometimes people need to separate all these things. What is most important, what you want to work on now, what can you not control, so you try to create some structure, some control in what is ongoing in the client's life. You see that when I'm working, it's mainly me touching the dolls, but the idea is when you work with your clients, you set it out together. Yesterday another counsellor asked me, but how do you know if it is the correct image? Well, you don't know. You have to ask the other one. So you set out something. For example, let's take somebody else. The person says like, wow, I feel so intimidated by my boss, okay, who is very powerful. All right, I hadn't explained this image yet. So the blocks you can use to put somebody at a higher level, to show that they are more important or higher in hierarchy, or okay, is very powerful, or you feel very powerless in front of him. And maybe the client will say, no, it's not like that, it's like this. And then the client can take the blocks, okay, and correct the image. And then you can look at it together and say, oh my God, wow, how does that feel? Okay, so you do it together, all right? You find the image that corresponds together. So, and after a while, clients, they know how the dolls work. So they will be quite interactive. Sometimes counselors ask, like, do you do it straight away in the first session, or do you wait? Or sometimes, like if a client has a very complex family situation and he tells me, look, and then I have my parents, but they are divorced, and so we have an uncle living in. I said, whoa, okay, can we just try to set it out so I understand what your family looks like? Okay, so it could be that I use it in the first session. Could be that I don't, that I just listen, and then maybe in the second session say to the client, hey, is it okay for me to try something? And then I just take my dolls, put them on the table. So I didn't mention earlier, so you can use the dolls in a session with one client. You can perfectly use it also with couples. Okay, and you can use it with a family. This one, as I said, can be to visualize power, aggression, okay, domestic violence. This can be a very powerful image for domestic violence. Because then, in demonstrating this, I visualize that this lady must feel very unsafe. So the objective of my counseling would be, what can we do, or who can you contact, or how can you act to make him come back down and make this bearable again. All right? Okay. So you see, all the time, I'm trying to make the clients do something with the situation that she is in. Like if a family member is not well, maybe if the mother is depressed and the father is absent, children will try to be very helpful, and they will maybe take over the role of a mother or a father. This is okay if this is temporary. Children should not be replacing parents. So if this family would come to me, I would say, wow, I can see that this child is really trying to help the family in surviving. But what could we do to make this one stand back up again and this one to be more present, so this one can be a child again? Okay, so we've done the blocks, we've done the resources. This one I use for when people would have economical problems. Okay, this is a useful one. This one I use to represent alcohol problems. What I hear very often here in Cambodia is the pressure that people can, I'll put it like this, experience from traditional values from the parents. Okay, so it's important to get married, to have a good diploma, to have a good reputation. And sometimes the young generation wants to do it differently. And there's a lot of pressure from society to follow what the generations did before you. So this often results that you kind of suppress, hide what you really want, and just follow what society and parents desire from you. And what I see in counseling is that then this generation becomes quite depressed because they can't really do what they desire. Okay, so then I would use this to represent values from society, and then this would be representation of being cut off from what you desire and what you want. A magical stick, my favorite one. Okay, so I use this when people feel very blocked. Okay, and then I ask them, okay, if you would wake up in the morning and things would be very different. Imagine that the client said, like, I have no energy, I can't achieve anything. Okay, imagine you'd go to bed, and when you wake up in the morning, a miracle has happened. And so the miracle has happened. Okay, put the magical stick. Sometimes for children, they like to use Cinderella. Okay, so you had a visit by Cinderella. Okay, so when you would wake up in the morning, what would you be doing differently? Oh, I would have so much energy. I would start my day by doing a meditation exercise. Oh, wow, okay. So you walk the client through that behavior. Okay, so you already heard me say that you can use tools for adults and children. Just to remind you that when you work with children, it's best to use it as of the age of 10. The method is not to play with, the method is to visualize the reality. So the age 9, 10 should be fine. Okay, so a last piece of advice when you're working with the dolls. For example, if you finish with this setup, it's very important how you tidy up the dolls. Okay, so I would like to invite you to do it together with your client, because when you visualize their story, they get very invested into these dolls. So don't just smack them into a box. You tidy them up together. All right, so you say, okay, to the client, so it's, let's close the session here for today, all right? And then you sort of just tidy up together, put the dolls back where they were. And the tidying up is like closing what has been said, all right? And it's like a little ritual at the end of the session to say that the session is over. So I think after explaining how we use the symbols, I'd like to demonstrate with a very short case. So, for example, if we would have a mother who is very depressed because she has a small baby that's crying all the time, so I will put the baby up to demonstrate the high reactiveness of the baby. And because of this situation, the father is very absent. Okay, so this is how the couple comes in for counseling. So the mother's very depressed, so I would like to explore with them their experience in their own family. So I would find out that the mother, in her background, also had a very absent father, and her own mother was also depressed. Okay, so when I'm working with a client, I would set out this, all right, and then I would also ask the father what is his background, and then I discovered that he was very close to his mother, very, very close. Okay, but he also had an absent father. Okay, and because of having an absent father, he feels powerless. He doesn't really have a good model on how to deal with his own child. Okay, so in this session, I would ask the client to tell me what strikes you when we set this up. What do you discover? What patterns can you see? And they will probably say there is a pattern of absent fathers and a lack of modeling to show me as a father how to deal with this. Okay, so my intervention in therapy would then be, how can I make father more present in the family? So mother will feel empowered and the child will feel that both parents are there to contain him and manage a situation. Okay, so that in a nutshell how you can work with the dolls. I hope you feel inspired, and maybe next step can be to go out shopping to buy yourself some material and try it out. Good luck.